Welcome to your story for sleep. Here, every night begins with a quiet moment and a timeless tale. Let go of the day, take a deep breath, and settle in. Tonight's story will guide you gently into rest, through history, mystery, and calm. Close your eyes if you wish, and let the journey begin. The night has settled quietly. The wind whispers across the waves of the vast Pacific Ocean, brushing against a lonely island that seems to drift outside of time itself. Far away from any continent, surrounded by endless blue, lies a speck of land that has captured the curiosity of the world for centuries. A place known to many as Easter Island. But to the people who call it home, it is something older, something deeper. They call it Rapa Nui. This island holds secrets, deep secrets. Here, scattered across hills and coasts, stand hundreds of massive stone heads, the Moai. They are carved from volcanic rock, with long faces, heavy brows, and hollow eyes that seem to watch, not the sea, but something within. They do not speak. And yet, they whisper something to those who come close. An ancient silence, both peaceful and unsettling. Why were these statues built? How were they moved across such rugged terrain? Who carved them, and who were they meant to honor? But the greatest question of all remains. What are they guarding? In tonight's story, we won't simply explore stone and soil. We'll step into the mythology of the island, its beginnings, its rise and fall, and the legends still carried in the voices of the waves. We'll hear of gods and ancestors, of kings and navigators, of collapse, rediscovery, and survival. So, let the world fall away. Sink into your pillow. Feel your breath grow softer. Tonight, we drift through mist and memory, to a mysterious island where stone giants keep watch beneath the stars. This is your bedtime history lecture, a journey into a forgotten world. This is the stone heads of Easter Island. What are they guarding? Let us begin where the land begins, with the island itself. Rapa Nui. It is one of the most isolated inhabited islands on Earth. Over 3,500 kilometers from the coast of Chile. Over 2,000 kilometers from the nearest island with any people. A dot of volcanic land lost in the center of the South Pacific. Shaped like a triangle, with 3 extinct volcanoes at its corners. When you look at a map, it barely seems real. Just ocean. Ocean in every direction. No neighboring lands. No bridges. No escape. And yet, people found it. They sailed across vast, open waters. Using only the stars, the wind, and the rhythm of the waves. To reach this lonely island. The land is modest. It's only about 24 kilometers across at its widest point. The coast is mostly cliffs, dark, volcanic stone falling sharply into the sea. The interior is soft green, wind-shaped, and quiet. But despite its small size, Rapa Nui feels heavy, as if it carries the weight of centuries. As if the island remembers. It is not lush like a tropical paradise. Its trees are few now. Its soil, tired. But the sky here is vast and wide. And when the wind blows, it sounds like voices. Scientists believe the island formed from volcanic eruptions over 2 million years ago. The last volcano, Rapa Nui, erupted just before the first people arrived. The land was shaped by fire, but its stories were carved in stone. There are no rivers here, no fresh springs, only rainwater and underground reserves. Life on this island was never easy, but somehow it was chosen. It was settled. And as you drift further into this story, imagine what it must have felt like to stand on that shore for the first time, to see no other land on the horizon, only sky, stone, and silence. What kind of people chose this place? What were they seeking? And what did they find? Some say Rapa Nui was meant to be a sacred place. Others believe it was the edge of a lost empire, a last outpost of something greater, now forgotten. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. This island was born in isolation, and that isolation became its soul. Over the centuries, it became a world unto itself, a place of mystery, of ritual, of stone faces watching time pass, silently. Now that we know the island, the shape of its land, the breadth of its silence, let us turn to the people who first came here. No one knows exactly when the first humans set foot on Rapa Nui. But the islanders themselves remember the moment, through stories passed down for centuries. The tale begins not with a boat, but with a dream. Long ago, far across the ocean, in a land swallowed by rising waters, a great chief named Hotu Matu'e ruled over a proud people. Their homeland was called Hiva, a place lost to time. Some say it was part of the Marquesas. Others say it was never real at all. But one night, the king had a vision. He saw a new land, small, green, shaped like a fish, floating alone in the sea. A voice told him, "This is where your people must go. This is where a new world must begin." So he gathered his people. 7 scouts were sent ahead, across the ocean, in great double-hulled canoes carved from sacred trees. They sailed for weeks, perhaps months, guided by the stars and the ocean swells. When they returned, they said, "Yes, the land is real. It is empty, waiting." So Hotu Matu'e, with his wives, children, and followers, boarded the sacred canoes. They took with them seeds, tools, chickens, and fire. They brought stories. They brought gods. They brought memory. And so began the greatest migration in human history, the peopling of the Pacific. Their journey was vast. They crossed thousands of kilometers without a map, without metal, without compasses, navigating only by the night sky, reading stars like scripture. And finally, they saw it. A triangle of green rising from the sea, black cliffs, birds circling, and silence. They called it Te Pito o Te Henua, the navel of the world. It was here, on this lonely island, that Hotu Matu'e planted the first crops, divided the land among his clans, and became the first Ariki, the sacred king. The people who followed him became Rapa Nui, named for the land itself. And from that moment on, the island was never truly empty again. The story of Hotu Matu'e is more than just a legend, it's a living memory, woven into the very fabric of Rapa Nui's culture. These first settlers faced a harsh new world. The island was wild and untamed. No fresh rivers flowed. No large trees towered above. Only the endless ocean surrounded them. Yet, they adapted. They planted sweet potatoes, taro, and bananas. They raised chickens and fished the ocean's abundant waters. Slowly, they built homes and carved tools from stone and bone. And as generations passed, their connection to the land deepened. They created complex social systems, rituals, and myths, all centered around the spirits of their ancestors. According to Rapa Nui belief, the island's power came from mana, a sacred spiritual force. The Moai statues were not just stone, they were vessels of this power, honoring those who came before. But the arrival of Hotu Matue was only the beginning. From these humble roots sprang a culture rich in mystery, innovation, and strength. One that would create some of the most enigmatic monuments the world has ever known. And as we listen, remember, this was a people who crossed an ocean the size of a continent, guided only by stars and faith, to build a new world from stone and spirit. As the people settled and flourished on Rapa Nui, they began a tradition that would come to define the island, carving massive statues known as Moai. These towering stone figures are unlike anything else in the world. Some stand over 10 meters tall. Others weigh more than 80 tons. Each one has a distinct face, carved with careful precision. Elongated noses, strong chins, and deep eye sockets that seem to pierce the horizon. But why did the Rapa Nui create these statues? What purpose did they serve? For the islanders, the Moai were more than monuments. They were sacred embodiments of their ancestors, carved to watch over their descendants, to protect the land, and to connect the living with the spiritual world. The statues stood on massive stone platforms called ahu, usually placed along the coastline, facing inland. It is said the Moai watched over their communities, channeling mana, the spiritual energy believed to bring protection and prosperity. Creating a Moai was a monumental task. It required not only skill but also community effort and deep spiritual commitment. The quarry of Reino Raraku, a volcanic crater, was the birthplace of almost all the Moai. Here, the islanders chiseled the statues directly from the volcanic tuff, a soft, workable rock formed from compressed volcanic ash. Carving a Moai was a delicate balance between art and engineering. The sculptors shaped the figures with stone tools, carefully removing excess rock to reveal the statue's form. It is believed that some Moai were even carved with internal structures to reduce weight and prevent cracking. Once carved, the statues were transported across the island to their ahu. This journey was perilous and mysterious. How such enormous stones moved without modern machinery remains a subject of fascination and debate. Some say the Moai walked to their places, moved by ritual chants and unseen forces. Others believe ropes, wooden sledges, and sheer human power pushed these giants across rugged terrain. Regardless of the method, the creation and placement of the Moai was a sacred ritual, a demonstration of the Rapa Nui's connection to their ancestors and the land. As you imagine the carving of these statues, think of the hands shaping history, the faces emerging slowly from stone, and the breath of an ancient people echoing through time. The story of the Moai continues with their final journey, from the quarry to the ceremonial platforms. Transporting these giant stone figures was no small feat. Some Moai weighed as much as modern trucks. Yet, the islanders moved them several kilometers, across uneven ground, without wheels or draft animals. Ancient Rapa Nui legends tell us the statues were made to walk. Through sacred rituals, chants, and the power of mana, the Moai would seemingly rise and glide forward, step by step, to their resting places. Modern researchers offer practical explanations. Teams of people likely used ropes and wooden rollers to haul the statues. The paths from Reno Raraku quarry to the Ahu are still visible, carved deep into the landscape. Despite centuries of study, no single theory fully explains the methods used, keeping the mystery alive. Beyond their monumental size, the Moai are symbols of the island's social and spiritual order. Each statue likely represents an important ancestor or chief, a protector of the clan. Standing tall and silent, they linked the living with the divine. Over time, the Moai evolved. Early statues were smaller and simpler, while later ones grew larger, with more detailed carvings. Some even had pukeo, red scoria, hats, placed atop, adding to their majesty. But the Moai's power was not just in their size or shape. Their eyes, often left hollow, were later inlaid with coral and obsidian, giving them a watchful gaze. With their eyes opened, the Moai were believed to become vessels of spiritual power, truly alive in the eyes of the people. The Moai were guardians, watching over the island, the people, and the delicate balance of nature. As you breathe slowly, imagine the quiet strength of these stone giants. Their silent vigil stretching through centuries, whispering stories of faith, survival, and human will. The story of the Moai would be incomplete without visiting their birthplace, the quarry of Reno Raraku. Reno Raraku is a volcanic crater, its slopes dotted with hundreds of half-finished statues, some still attached to the rock. It is a vast, open workshop carved by time and human hands. Here, the islanders sculpted the Moai over centuries, chiseling the stone with basalt tools known as toki. The rock at Reno Raraku is soft volcanic tuff, easier to carve than harder stones found elsewhere on the island. But the quarry is more than a factory. It is a place of mystery and magic. Why were so many statues abandoned halfway? Some remain partially carved, faces frozen in stone as if the sculptors vanished suddenly. Was it due to a sudden change in ritual, or a tragic event that stopped the work? Or perhaps the islanders realized the limits of their resources and stopped creating new giants. Reno Raraku also holds clues about the social structure of the Rapa Nui people. The size and style of Moai from this quarry evolved over time, reflecting changes in power, religion, and community. Walking through Reno Raraku today feels like stepping into a lost world, where stone giants linger in the shadows, watching silently over the empty land. Imagine the sound of chisels striking stone, the breath of workers, the chants of priests calling on the gods. Feel the sweat and hope that carved each face. Here, art met devotion. Here, a culture shaped its most iconic legacy. One of the greatest mysteries of Easter Island is how the ancient Rapa Nui moved these massive stone giants across the island. The Moai, some weighing over 80 tons, were carved at the quarry of Reno Raraku, yet they stand today along the coasts, sometimes several kilometers away. How were these statues transported over uneven terrain, without wheels, animals, or modern machines? The island's oral tradition offers a fascinating answer. The Moai walked. According to legend, the statues were made to move upright, swaying forward step by step, guided by powerful chants and the spiritual energy known as mana. Witnesses to this ancient knowledge described seeing the Moai rise, balance, and slowly walk to their sacred platforms. This tale has inspired countless researchers, adventurers, and dreamers. Modern scientists have proposed several practical theories. Using wooden sledges or rollers, teams of workers could drag the Moai. A walking method, where ropes tied around the statue allowed it to rock side to side as it moved forward, mimicking a walking motion. Levering and sliding along prepared paths. Experiments have shown that with careful coordination, small groups can move large statues using simple technology available to the Rapa Nui. But no theory explains everything perfectly. The island's steep hills, narrow paths, and lack of large trees make some ideas challenging. Moreover, the effort required would have been enormous, reflecting the deep spiritual and social importance of the Moai. The statues were not mere monuments, they were living symbols of power, ancestry, and protection. The very act of moving a Moai was a ritual, a demonstration of faith and unity. As you listen, imagine the chants rising over the island, the creak of ropes, the steady rhythm of footsteps in the soft earth, and the slow, deliberate steps of the stone giants themselves. The mystery of their movement remains a powerful reminder that human determination and belief can move even the heaviest of stones. The Moai statues were not simply stone faces, they were sacred vessels, bridges between the world of the living and the realm of ancestors. For the Rapa Nui people, the eyes of the Moai held special significance. At first, the eye sockets were empty, like a statue waiting to awaken. But at specific times, the islanders would place white coral and black obsidian into these sockets, opening the eyes. This ritual was profound. It was believed to give the Moai life, enabling them to watch over the island, protect its people, and channel the spiritual energy known as mana. The eyes symbolized vision, wisdom, and a connection to the divine. Through their gaze, the statues could communicate strength and guidance to their descendants. Scholars suggest that this eye-opening ceremony was one of the island's greatest communal celebrations, a moment that united the people in faith and power. The rituals surrounding the Moai involved offerings, dances, chants, and prayers. These ceremonies strengthened social bonds and renewed the community's spiritual energy. Moreover, the placement of the Moai on their ahu platforms was deliberate, often facing inland to watch over villages or sacred sites. Each statue was more than a monument. It was a guardian, a protector, a spiritual guide. Imagine the moonlight reflecting off the glowing coral eyes at night. The islanders gathered in reverence and awe. It was this connection to the spirit world that allowed the Moai to hold power even during times of hardship and change. As the eyes of the Moai opened, they became living symbols, embodying the spirit and authority of the ancestors. The materials used for the eyes were carefully chosen. White coral was gathered from the surrounding reefs, while black obsidian, sharp and reflective, was believed to channel spiritual power. These eyes transformed the statues from silent stone to active guardians. With their gaze fixed over the land, they watched for threats and blessed the island with prosperity. The opening of the eyes was not a one-time event. It was repeated in cycles, tied to the island's calendar and important ceremonies. During these times, the community came together to honor the ancestors, renew alliances, and ask for protection. But the Moai were not only spiritual protectors. They were also symbols of social status and power. Only the most influential clans could commission large moai, reflecting their prestige and lineage. The size and craftsmanship of a moai communicated the strength of a clan's leadership, its connection to the gods, and its right to govern. This interplay of spirituality and politics is part of what makes the story of Rapa Nui so fascinating. Imagine the ancient islanders gathering at the ahu during these rituals. The sound of chanting echoing across the plains. The flicker of torches illuminating the carved faces. And the shared sense of awe and unity. These ceremonies bound the people together, reminding them of their origins, their gods, and their responsibilities. Even after centuries of change and challenge, the eyes of the Moai continue to inspire wonder. Silent sentinels watching over a land steeped in mystery. Despite the majesty of the Moai and the strength of the Rapa Nui culture, the island faced profound and lasting challenges that would change the fate of its people forever. For centuries, the islanders lived in harmony with the land, but as their population grew, the demands on the fragile environment increased dramatically. Rapa Nui is a small island, isolated and with limited resources. Its volcanic soil was fertile, but only so much could be farmed without replenishing the soil. Over generations, the once abundant forests were cleared to make way for agriculture, for firewood, and crucially, for the transportation of the enormous Moai statues. These trees were not only a resource but a vital part of the island's ecosystem, holding the soil together and supporting biodiversity. When the forests disappeared, the land began to erode. Heavy rains washed away topsoil, reducing the island's ability to sustain crops. Agricultural terraces collapsed, and food production dropped. This scarcity would have had a profound impact on the community's survival. As resources grew scarce, competition among clans intensified. Once united by shared beliefs and a common ancestry, groups began vying for control over remaining fertile land and access to dwindling resources. Archaeological evidence suggests an increase in fortifications and weapons, indicating periods of conflict and social tension. These struggles likely led to a breakdown of the social order that had maintained the island's peace for centuries. One of the most visible signs of this upheaval was the toppling of many Moai statues. Fallen Moai, scattered across the island, speak of symbolic acts of rebellion, destruction, or ritual decommissioning. Whether toppled by rival clans or as part of a religious shift, this change marked a profound transformation in Rapa Nui society. Adding to the island's troubles were external forces. In 1722, the Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen became the first European to record contact with Easter Island. In the following decades, other explorers and whalers arrived, bringing new diseases to which the islanders had no immunity. These illnesses decimated the population, further weakening social structures. Additionally, slave raids by Peruvian ships in the 19th century removed large portions of the population, fracturing families and communities. The combination of environmental strain, internal conflict, and external impact led to what many call the collapse of Rapa Nui society. But it was not an abrupt end, rather, a complex process marked by adaptation, resilience, and survival amid hardship. Despite losing much of their former power and numbers, the people of Rapa Nui preserved their cultural identity. The Moai, even in their fallen state, remained a powerful symbol of their heritage. Their silent faces watch over the island, testifying to human creativity, belief, and the fragility of balance between nature and civilization. As you listen, Imagine the shifting tides of time washing over the island, the rise and fall of societies, the eternal dance between human hope and the harshness of the natural world. Reflect on what this story teaches us about stewardship, humility, and the need to live in harmony with our environment. Though the forests of Rapa Nui no longer stand as they once did, and the statues no longer watch fully upright, the spirit of the island remains strong. It reminds us that even in collapse, there is resilience, and from endings come new beginnings. As we move beyond the history of Rapa Nui's past, its challenges, and its cultural achievements, we come to a question that resonates far beyond this isolated island in the Pacific. What is the legacy of Rapa Nui, and what lessons does this remote place hold for us today? The story of Rapa Nui is often told as a cautionary tale, a dramatic example of environmental mismanagement leading to societal collapse. Yet, its true legacy is far richer, more complex, and filled with hope as well as warning. At its core, the island's history is a powerful reminder of the delicate balance between human activity and the natural world. Rapa Nui was once covered in lush forests, home to abundant wildlife and fertile soils. But as the islanders carved their moai, farmed the land, and expanded their society, they gradually depleted the very resources that sustained them. This pattern is echoed in modern times across the globe. Deforestation, soil erosion, and loss of biodiversity continue to threaten communities everywhere. Rapa Nui's past stands as a silent testimony to the consequences of ignoring nature's limits. But there is also a story of resilience. The Rapa Nui people adapted to their changing environment in remarkable ways. They developed sophisticated agricultural techniques such as manavai, stone garden enclosures that protect crops from wind and conserve moisture. These innovations allowed them to survive despite harsh conditions. Today, the people of Rapa Nui are reconnecting with their heritage, revitalizing their language, traditions, and culture. The Moai, once toppled and forgotten by many, have become symbols of pride and identity, not just for the islanders, but for all who admire human creativity and endurance. Beyond environmental lessons, the island teaches us about the power of community and belief. The Moai, massive and silent, remind us that culture and faith can shape societies, inspire cooperation, and build lasting legacies. The rituals surrounding the Moai fostered unity, a sense of purpose, and respect for ancestors and nature. In our modern world, where rapid change and uncertainty often dominate, Rapa Nui's story encourages us to value connection, to the land, to each other, and to our shared past. Furthermore, the mysteries that still surround the Moai, how they were moved, the exact nature of their rituals, the full story of their society, inspire curiosity, humility, and wonder. These unanswered questions remind us that history is a living conversation between the past and present. It invites us to keep learning, questioning, and appreciating the depth of human experience. The island's remote beauty also speaks to the human spirit's yearning for meaning and discovery. Rapa Nui draws visitors and scholars from around the world, eager to stand before the Moai and feel the weight of centuries pressing softly through stone. As you listen now, imagine standing on the windswept shores of Easter Island, the ocean stretching endlessly, the Moai silently watching, and the island whispering stories of triumph, tragedy, and hope. Let the tale of Rapa Nui settle gently in your mind, a reminder that even the smallest places can hold the greatest stories, and that our actions ripple through time. As we close this journey, Take a moment to reflect on what you carry with you from this island of stone giants. Perhaps it is a lesson in balance, a call to stewardship, or simply a sense of awe at what humanity can create. Whatever it is, know that the legacy of Rapa Nui continues. A quiet, enduring voice from the past, echoing into our future. As we reach the end of our journey through the mysterious and enchanting story of Easter Island, it is fitting to take a moment to reflect deeply on what these stone giants truly represent. The Moai statues, standing silently against the vast ocean and sky, are more than just ancient sculptures carved from volcanic rock. They are timeless symbols, testaments to human creativity, faith, and the enduring desire to connect with something greater than ourselves. For centuries, these statues have faced the relentless forces of nature. The salty sea breeze, the pounding rain, and the scorching sun. Yet, despite the erosion and weathering, they remain upright, stoic and steadfast, as if guarding not only the island but also the stories, hopes and fears of a people long gone. When we look at the Moai, we are reminded of the incredible will and ingenuity of the Rapa Nui people. Isolated on a tiny island in the Pacific, they created these enormous statues without the use of modern tools, machines, or beasts of burden. Every Moai is a marvel of craftsmanship and collective effort, carved and transported across difficult terrain with sheer human determination. But the story of the Moai also serves as a profound lesson about balance, the delicate relationship between humans and their environment. The Rapa Nui once lived in harmony with their island's resources, but as their population grew and the demand for materials like timber increased, that balance was disturbed. The deforestation and soil erosion that followed serve as a stark reminder to us all that unchecked exploitation of natural resources can lead to devastating consequences. However, the tale of Easter Island is not simply one of decline and tragedy. It is equally a story of resilience and adaptation. Even in the face of environmental change and social upheaval, the Rapa Nui found ways to survive. They innovated new farming techniques, preserved their cultural traditions, and maintained their spiritual connection to the land and their ancestors. Today, the people of Rapa Nui continue to honor their heritage with pride and care, breathing new life into traditions that had once seemed at risk of vanishing. As you listen and prepare to drift into sleep, allow yourself to feel the calm and enduring presence of the Moai. Imagine standing among them in the quiet dawn or under a star-filled sky, feeling the ancient energy that still lingers in the air. Sense the silent stories they hold, of triumph and loss, faith and doubt, creation and destruction. Let these stone sentinels inspire within you a sense of wonder and reflection. Their enduring mystery invites us to consider our own place in the vast story of humanity, our connection to nature, and the legacies we leave behind. May the steady gaze of the Moai bring you peace and grounding as you close your eyes. May their silent strength remind you of the power of perseverance and hope. And may the whispers of Easter Island's past guide your dreams toward balance, courage, and renewal. Thank you for joining this tranquil journey through the legacy of the stone giants. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with mystery and light.